You can kick off an Ollama workflow from just about anywhere. And for this video, that means focusing on two spots where my best ideas usually go to die. In the gym, using the Apple Watch, and in the car, using CarPlay. And that's the big promise on the thumbnail, and I can tell you, it actually works in a real-world way rather than just a staged demo. If you get a sudden thought mid-workout while your phone is tucked away in a locker, or if something hits you while you're stuck in traffic, you just hit record and start talking. That audio gets transcribed and then goes to N8N and runs through Ollama for processing automatically. So you don't have to wait until you get back to your desk to save that thought. I really shouldn't have to make a video like this because this process should be easy, but it turned out to be a much bigger headache than I expected. Since the Apple ecosystem is what I use every day, I'm sticking with that for this demonstration. My experience with Android is pretty limited because I just rarely see them. And when I do, it's usually a family member, one particular family member, asking for tech support because they find the interface confusing. Now, if you're an Android user, I'm still confident you can take these concepts and find tools that probably even work even better for your specific device. Now, most voice note setups fail the second you actually need them because they always demand one extra step, one more tap, or a frantic hunt for the right app. CarPlay usually doesn't give you a straightforward path to record a quick thought. And watch recording often gets annoying because it relies too heavily on having your phone right next to you to do the actual work. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you the capture flow that finally removed that friction for me, along with the N8N and Ollama path that turns a messy voice clip into a useful note. While most of the heavy lifting for the workflow came from my last video, this specific entry point is what actually made the whole system worth using. Let's start with the part that determined whether I would even bother using this system at all. Here's the real problem we're dealing with. Most note-taking systems don't fail because an AI is weak or the folder structure is messy, but they die simply because that very first step is annoying. If capturing a thought takes one extra tap or "I'll do it later" mental note, that idea is gone forever. The default voice memo route isn't any better because you still have to manually open the app and then find that file later just to start the next step. This isn't a capture system, it's just more homework for your future self. I tend to think about capturing ideas more like a fire alarm than a filing cabinet. A filing cabinet is great for being neat and organized with plenty of tabs, but a fire alarm has just one job. You need to be able to hit it instantly when the moment happens. If your system requires menus or good intentions to work, you've already missed the point. The watch path is a big deal for me because I often get my best ideas while I'm in the middle of a heavy set of deadlifts. Now, the gym I go to is mostly group classes, and there aren't any lockers. So my phone stays in the car or at home. My goal was simple. I wanted one-button capture without having to break my stride or stop what I was doing. The problem is that most watch apps are clunky or depend too much on the phone, which is just enough friction to stop you from using them. You end up losing great ideas, and then you spend the rest of the day remembering that you had a thought without actually remembering what it was. Now, to fix this, I started using an app called Just Press Record as my front door because it focuses entirely on fast capture instead of trying to be a full editor. The car path follows the same logic but solves a different kind of frustration. I need a way to capture thoughts safely and hands-free while I'm driving. But CarPlay often blocks you from doing the obvious thing. Most people assume a setup like this isn't possible in the car, but it actually works perfectly if you stop looking for a note app and start looking for that trigger. Once the recording starts, the automation can handle the heavy lifting later, and the secret lies in how Just Press Record handles those files. This is the big shift in the workflow. Just Press Record provides that fast trigger that I need, and since it uses iCloud for storage, syncing everything from the watch or the car back to the Mac is incredibly simple. It's the same backend with two different entry points. You don't need a perfect, complex setup to start. You just need a way to get the ball rolling from anywhere. This is also exactly why N8N is such a great fit for this project. One single workflow can take in the audio regardless of where it started, and then it handles all the boring glue work in the background. Quick pause here. This video is sponsored by N8N, and it's the exact type of job where the platform really shines. You take a messy input from the real world and create one clean path without writing a mountain of custom code. And you don't have to rely on an AI to figure it out almost from scratch every single time you do it, like most people do, and they're so excited about doing using OpenClaw. Once that file lands, Ollama can clean it up and make it useful. So let's look at the path from your wrist to the end result. At the top level, the map of how this works is actually pretty straightforward. You record your thought in Just Press Record. The file lands in iCloud, and then the automation takes over. Trying to integrate directly into iCloud from outside is usually a nightmare that breaks every month, which is what I see in Home Assistant every single month. So I prefer a much cleaner method. I use an Apple shortcut to grab that recording and blast it over to N8N on my VPS. That's the whole system. One app, one shortcut, one webhook to start the show. You don't need a maze of tiny tools that fail the moment you actually need to get a thought out of your head. Let's look at the watch first, since that's the part that changed my daily routine the most. When I'm out on a walk and an idea hits, I don't want to stop and fumble with my phone just to find an app. I want to tap, talk, and be done with it. The watch is the fastest path when your hands are busy, but your brain is moving a mile a minute. The annoying part is that most watch apps feel like they are tethered to the phone in a way that slows everything down. This is why the app choice is so important. Just Press Record works because it doesn't ask you to tag or to organize anything up front. It just lets you record immediately. CarPlay is really the sleeper feature of this whole setup. Driving is one of those times when your hands are occupied, but your mind is weirdly free to wander. Since CarPlay usually blocks standard note apps, people just give up on the idea of capturing thoughts behind the wheel. The trick is to use the recording app as your capture surface and let the smart automation happen after you've finished your drive. Once that recording syncs into iCloud, it becomes a handoff point that the rest of the system can actually trust. I prefer this because built-in syncing is almost always more reliable than a clever hack or a third-party relay. I don't want to spend my afternoon debugging an app when I just need a file to show up where the next step can see it. That's where the Apple shortcut comes in to do the unglamorous work. It finds the new file, transcribes the audio, and sends that text straight to the N8N webhook. This is the bridge that turns a simple audio file into a functional automation trigger. Now, if you saw my last video, you'll recognize that this is just a new front end for the same back end that we already built. I'm not reinventing any wheels here. I'm just feeding the system from better locations. On the N8N side, that webhook acts as the front door for the entire process. It takes the transcription and any extra data the shortcut sends over, so the workflow can do what it does best. We keep the state simple, pass the text along, and let the system retry if a step fails. This setup gets fragile if you try to be too clever, so I always recommend keeping this first half as simple as possible. Just receive the file, store the basics, and move on. This is the main reason I've stuck with N8N for all these years. It is incredibly good at connecting these weird edge cases without forcing you to write endless lines of glue code. You can start with a single webhook and grow the system over time. Once the audio actually lands, the goal shifts to making that note useful instead of just having a raw transcript. We took a deep dive into the workflow last time, but here is the too long didn't read version. First, we verified that the webhook actually received some text. Then we log that text into a database so that it's safe, which allows us to tell the webhook that the job is done. After that, we use an Ollama text classifier node to figure out what kind of note we're dealing with. I saw a few comments on a previous video asking about running N8N on a VPS. People wondered if relying on Ollama would cause issues if their home internet went down. To solve that, I actually use Ollama Cloud for a lot of these workflows. I still love local Ollama for certain tasks, but the cloud service is always on. It's incredibly fast, it's very cheap, and it has all the security and privacy benefits of Ollama Local. It's almost impossible to hit the usage limits in a single month with the Pro account, especially when you compare it to the pricey monthly subscriptions for things like ChatGPT and Claude. Plus, you don't have to worry about the privacy risks that come with those bigger platforms. Once the text is classified, the log gets a quick update. Then I have the system pull out the main concept from the transcript. If the AI sees a grocery list, it identifies exactly what I need to buy. And if it's a video idea, it summarizes the core concept. The log gets updated one last time before the final action happens, like adding a new line to an Obsidian Markdown file. The beauty of this is that the workflow stays exactly the same regardless of how you captured the note. Think of it like this. The transcript is just a bag of raw groceries dumped on your kitchen counter. Ollama is the person who steps in to put everything in the right piles so you don't have to wonder what you were thinking 3 days ago. Voice notes are almost never neat. You usually start with one thought, drift off into another, and then finally say the useful part at the very end. A machine is surprisingly good at filtering out that noise if you give it a clear prompt. That clean output is actually more important than the tech itself. It isn't just about having pretty formatting, it's about whether you actually trust the system enough to keep using it. If your notes come back in a readable format, you'll keep talking into your watch. If they come back as a giant wall of gibberish, you'll stop using the system within a couple of days. You don't need a massive second brain setup to see the value here. Just one clean note coming back from a quick recording is enough to prove the system works. The best part is that both the watch and the car feed into the exact same back end. Whether it's a gym thought or a traffic thought, it hits the same N8N flow and the same Ollama prompt. That keeps everything sane. I use the cloud version of Ollama for this, but you could easily swap in a local setup if you prefer. The capture side doesn't care where the text goes, as long as it has a place to land. Now, if you're planning to build this yourself, start with whatever causes you the most friction. If you get your best ideas while walking the dog, set up the watch first. If you're a commuter, start with CarPlay. Just make sure you keep the back end shared so you aren't stuck managing two different systems. The real victory here isn't the fancy AI logic. It's finally having a way to catch ideas exactly when and where they actually show up in your life. If I were starting this from scratch today, I would build it in 3 distinct phases. First, get Just Press Record working on either your watch or in your car. Second, set up the shortcut to transcribe that audio and send it to an N8N webhook on your VPS. Third, build out the workflow to process that text. That's really all there is to it. Don't try to build every single branch and destination on day one. Just pick one path and get a single note to travel from voice to a cleaned up text file. If you can get that one loop working end to end, the rest of the complexity becomes so much easier to manage. That is the logic behind the thumbnail. You really can start this process from anywhere because both entry points lead to the same destination. If you want to see the deeper logic behind the prompts and the formatting, go check out my previous N8N and Ollama video. Once you have this front end set up, your best ideas won't depend on whether you're sitting at your desk anymore. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Oh, that got cold.